back in the 1950s and 60s and 70s, a lot was, said about the quality of education in Nigeria from primary to tertiary. Somewhere along the line, a number of things happened that led to derailing. But let's get the costs to the economy first. We live in the age of a knowledge worker. Competing today is really a function of the quality of human capital that you have. And so you can invest all you want to. You can try as hard as you want to attract investment. If you don't have the right human capital, it won't go. So the need not only to reform higher education in terms of the ability of the system to deliver certain things, but in terms of curriculum, in terms of the emphasis. Part of what has happened through the years in Nigeria is that we've developed a certain entitlement mentality. We've got a process where the certificate becomes the end rather than a means to an end. And so we need to change the mindset of higher education. We need to change the mindset of education generally. We lost the way with vocational education. That needs to come back on track.
The problem seems even more magnified when you look at the weaknesses in the primary, secondary, and tertiary education. In drafting an education policy, what should be the key focus areas?
Yeah, indeed, you make a very important point in raising that question, because you see, whenever we talk about education in Nigeria, people go straight to tertiary education. If you get garbage in, what you will get out is garbage. We need to go to the very basics. Primary education. If you look at how primary education is offered in our country today, they're generally delivered by either entrepreneurs who offer nothing more than a place to get children away to and make money off of it without adding much value. So the training of kindergarten and primary school teachers is so much more important to our country than sometimes I think the emphasis we put on tertiary education. Those levels of education are typically offered by people who have a sense of a stake in the community. And that's why if we're rethinking education, it must become a partnership between the school, the government, and the community. Deep partnership where all the parents know that this is about the future of their children and commit to a certain amount of time, energy, and resources to making that environment a learning environment that will prepare those children for the future.
The low quality of education institutions in Nigeria means that good quality education is very expensive, especially at the primary and secondary levels. Does this reflect the opportunity for investors in the education system? What can you tell us about your experience at the Lagos Business School?
Well, it's very important that people come to education knowing that they're dealing with value. If you want to derive value, value costs something. And so people cannot expect to get best quality and not pay for it. Let me give you a simple example. In the early days of the Lagos Business School, one of the standards that was set is that you can't have teachers who are not developing themselves, trying to develop others. Because we live in a world that is changing so dramatically that every teacher is potentially obsolete. And so you have to keep renewing. However, one has to be careful that amount of money paid as fees does not become a surrogate for value, because there are people who can pay a lot of money and get very little value. And that's why setting of standards and superintending is critical.
The government has some ambitious job creation targets. What place must we give to education as we try to achieve this? In terms of skills development, how do we equip the students for the job market?
Well, first of all, curriculum change is very critical. But I see in the way some of the vice chancellors are approaching the matter, that they see it as, general studies program. This compulsory course that everybody will take on entrepreneurship. I was fascinated at this particular lecture that one of the discussants, a professor of business education at the University of Lagos, Professor Lloyd Jiogu, was referring to a study that he recently carried out. And he said, the Lagos Business School is the only place in Nigeria that teaches entrepreneurship. Everybody else teaches about entrepreneurship. Now, it's an interesting distinction to make, but the truth is, what is required is not just this required course that everybody goes through and squares and curses about so they can just pass and get on with it. It's a changing of the entire mindset of the fellow who's teaching chemistry, so that he approaches the teaching of chemistry from the perspective of the fact that this young man can live and with this knowledge found an enterprise that will use that particular knowledge to create value, employ other people, and so on.
I have heard that some multinationals screen as many as 1,000 candidates to fill one vacancy. How big a problem is the education for companies in Nigeria?
Well, actually, it's as challenging as to have led a couple of multinationals to establish programs where they interview and select the best of the best. And the best of the best are then put through a 1-year finishing school, really. A 1 year of retraining, like basic physics, basic mathematics, and all of that. At the end of 1 year, they test everybody, and they take a few of the best, and the rest, they consider that 1 year a contribution to their life. So it's pretty challenging, the situation, generally speaking. Yes, you'll still find the finest coming out of the system, but very often you find a lot of certificated illiterates coming out of the system.